Labas. I don't have a clever story to break the ice with you, some funny joke to put you at ease. Frankly, I don't want to put you at ease. With this talk, I want to do the opposite. Let me be straight with you. I'm quite serious when I tell you that the world that you know is in very real peril, and your generation, the children of the 21st century, are the only ones who can save the future. You may think, come on, American dude, don't be so dramatic. Things aren't that bad. But if you think this, then you're not living in reality. You may not see it because your generation is sometimes distracted by Instagram and TikTok and Fortnite. But if you look up from your screen for just a few seconds, it isn't hard to see the black clouds heading your way. Let me describe some of them for you. Number one, global warming. This is the easy one. I don't think I have to convince most of you that our planet is already in crisis. And if we don't take massive action now, according to nearly every climate scientist, you and your children will live in a less hospitable planet than we have now. I'm not a member of Extinction Rebellion, but if you want to have a long and healthy life, not to mention your children, you may want to join a movement that is demanding immediate changes to our consumerism before the planet becomes an unlivable place. Number two, weapons of mass destruction. In 1945, some of the scientists who helped to build the first nuclear bomb for the United States also created a society of scientists to warn about the catastrophic outcomes from nuclear war. To demonstrate this, they created the doomsday clock. Using scientific and geopolitical data, this metaphorical clock measures how close humanity is getting to self-extinction. Due to the massive social and technological upheavals of the last 20 years, and the recent political shifts in the US and elsewhere, the clock is currently set at 100 seconds until midnight. That means we are very close to being screwed as a species if we don't make some major changes. Number three, global economic collapse. Over the past few decades, war, corruption, and poverty have triggered some of the greatest human migrations in history. This has disrupted economies and created deep social tensions that I probably don't need to explain to you. The COVID-19 pandemic has turned these streams of economic troubles into gushing waterfalls, and a reckoning is coming from the massive accumulation of debt that has been created by governments this year to stabilize economies that were on lockdown for months. Most economists and politicians know that this mountain of debt is a gigantic problem that will need to be faced once the world calms down, but right now they're too busy putting out fires that are still burning. Without a reorganization of the global economic order, it is nearly impossible to imagine that these problems will get resolved under the current systems. And there are plenty of other global issues that need to be addressed, from human trafficking and clean water to education and social equity. The point of describing these problems is not to scare you or to make you depressed. The point is to wake you up so that your generation can face them. None of these problems can be addressed by one nation or even a small group of nations. These challenges can be overcome, but only if we work together as a global community in a way that humans have never done before. So here's the key that could turn things around and save the future for you and your children: global citizenship. To solve planetary problems, there must be a strong planet-wide system of human cooperation, grounded in a sense of responsibility for the well-being of every human, regardless of religion, color, language, or nationality. Some of you may have heard of this idea. Some of you may have heard of it, but you think that it's not possible, or it's a nice idea, but unrealistic. Others of you may think it's actually the wrong approach completely, and that nations are better off slowly withering away by themselves. Today, I want to convince you that global citizenship is not just the right approach, but if your generation doesn't start working together, united in this goal of shared global prosperity, you will actually be totally. If you are unconvinced, let me explain further. We are in the year 2020. One of the most important truths that should be obvious to you by now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, is that we are all connected. Events in one part of the world will affect people in the rest of the world. Las Vegas rules are gone. What happens in your nation does not stay in your nation. Therefore, national borders are becoming less relevant, and you, young adults, need to prepare yourselves to be good leaders in this new era of human civilization. Global citizens of a global community must think differently about many things in order to survive the planetary changes that are coming, such as protecting the natural world, multiculturalism, wealth justice, and a shift in our traditional loyalties. And it's crucial that you construct this new society with fairness and compassion. So let's talk about what it looks like for you to change the story of humanity and become a generation of global citizens and global leaders. First, let's talk about loyalty. Commitment to your family, your neighbors, and even your broader culture is a good thing. And I'm not suggesting that anyone should betray their homeland. But if we are all going to survive the coming challenges to the planet Earth, we must see our home nations as part of a neighborhood of other nations. If one home catches on fire, it endangers all of the other homes in the neighborhood. In the United States, some neighborhoods are part of an association. Each homeowner in the group pays membership fees and gets to help set rules that everyone in the neighborhood will follow so that everyone benefits. It's called collective cooperation. Everyone contributes a little bit to keeping the streets maintained and the parks cleaned and agrees to be responsible with their own homes so that everyone benefits. If I'm dumping sewage out of my front door because I haven't taken care of my plumbing in my home, well, I'm being a bad neighbor. In the same way, if all of the nations of the world follow the same rules, everyone can enjoy the same common spaces together. So, multinational agreements about global warming, for instance, the Paris Climate Accord, therefore make a ton of sense. Everyone wins. But some people are afraid of this type of cooperation. Some political leaders think that they should be able to do whatever they want and that national sovereignty gives them the right to trash the neighborhood if they feel like it. A good example of this is Jair Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil. The entire world needs the oxygen and carbon capturing that nature has built for us over thousands of years in the Amazon rainforest. Bolsonaro thinks that global warming is a myth and that he can allow logging and farming companies to cut down the rainforests without any environmental consequences. Science says he's wrong. Bolsonaro believes that nationalism, the idea that a nation has the freedom to do whatever they want on their own land, gives him the right to act irresponsibly. He and other nationalists believe that the money generated from this deforestation justifies his actions because it benefits his people. Global citizenship says he is wrong about that, not to mention common sense, because no nation should be able to pollute our shared oceans and air or destroy the ecosystems that all humans and animals need for a stable planet. We also need to embrace multiculturalism. Listen, I love my American culture. It's where I am most comfortable and most at ease. Almost everyone feels that way about their own culture. And global citizens are not asking you to cancel your culture or erase your cultural history. Multiculturalism simply means trying to accept one another in all of our differences. Where our cultural values are different, let's talk about them and maybe find a compromise when it comes to sharing space in a community. We do this all the time in our own homes. For instance, my wife likes to watch dramatic TV shows that are all about relationships and romance. I enjoy exploring new worlds or observing what would happen if zombies tried to tear apart those relationships. Although we have different preferences, my wife and I sometimes can compromise. We watch what she wants sometimes, she watches what I want sometimes, or we find something in the middle that we can both be happy with. This is what multiculturalism is. It's not destroying preferences, it's simply finding compromises so that we can live in peace with one another. LCC International University is also a great example of this type of global community, where people from different cultures live together and talk through their differences. It's also happening in many other cities around the world right now. And with a little humility, you just might learn something interesting from someone else that comes from a completely different background from your own. Lastly, I want to warn you about the growing problem of wealth disparity and injustice. But first, some good news. In the past few decades, thanks to global cooperation, the percentage of humanity living in extreme poverty, defined as living off of less than €2 per day, has been dropping significantly, and this is awesome. But the bad news is that the effects of COVID-19 are beginning to reverse this trend in the wrong direction. As you can see from this report by Credit Suisse, where the blue columns represent global wealth and the red columns represent the human population in each range, 11% of the humans on our planet control 82% of the wealth. I don't deny that some of those people worked hard for their wealth, but more often than not, the systems that undergird our civilization are designed to keep that money with those wealthy people instead of fairly allowing redistribution of those funds towards the bottom categories. Your generation is capable of reimagining what a global community looks like that ensures no one has to live in humiliating poverty, and that the extremely wealthy pay their fair share. Fortunately for you, some forward-thinking people at the United Nations and other international organizations have been working on many of these issues already, and they have plans. They're called the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And there are brilliant people working on these solutions all around the world right now. The problem is that many national politicians don't take these plans seriously, or they just ignore them completely. That's where your generation needs to step up and convince your leaders of your home nations, as well as your public, that your future depends on more global cooperation on projects like the Sustainable Development Goals. Establishing more cooperation for global governance, getting nations to work together and give up some of their sovereignty will be complicated and messy. Many people, mostly people older than you, will tell you that this is impossible and that the nation state will always put its own priorities over the rest of the world. But you must ignore these doubters and remind them that in order for one nation to thrive in the 21st century, all nations must thrive. We are in this together. So here's what you can do right now, today, to save the world. Become a global citizen. If you're excited, one great next step is to get involved in politics. The fact is that the future will not be changed until global citizens become leaders in the nation states that influence the world most. Already we see that smaller nations like Finland and New Zealand, led by women, I should say, are thriving because they are cooperating across national divides to solve some of these global challenges. Now, you don't have to be the president of the European Union to create change, but you can help campaign for an ethical member of parliament, study to become a diplomat, or get hired as a government aide that can help advance the agenda of global cooperation. Another option in your new global responsibility is to volunteer your time and energy to a worthy global cause. There are many places where you can get involved, especially now since so much volunteering is online. You can work with an organization on the other side of the world through social media and organizing. You can get active with non-governmental organizations like Global Citizen, Doctors Without Borders, the UN Refugee Agency, Transparency International Lithuania. I'm sure that there are plenty of other options for you to choose from at the festival right outside this door. No matter what, just do something. Don't sit in front of that screen all day, unless you're using that screen to change the world. Find an organization with a global mission that excites you and get involved with them. Grab a friend to join you. You won't regret it. And remember the dark clouds on the horizon. They are real. Don't ignore them. Demand a new global perspective from your leaders. You and your generation can change the course of history. I believe in you. Ačiū. Viso gero.